Welcome everyone to a new tutorial and Let's Play series on Rule the Waves. And this game is like a World War I naval simulation game. It's like an add-on for, it's not officially an add-on, but basically it's something built upon Steam and Iron, which is just purely a World War I era naval simulator. So this is going to be with the campaign type stuff added in. We can see that you can play as different nations, you have different budgets, etc. Now for the tutorial series, I'm going to kind of do a rather easy setup. I'm going to choose the United States and I'm going to do historical naval budget. Great Britain has technically the highest game budget, but they also have the most colonies. They have to spread a lot of ships around. I've always preferred kind of a compact unit that moves, you can have a giant battle. So the United States, I think, has to spread out to 4 regions, but other than those 4 regions, they don't need to defend, whereas Great Britain basically has to spread itself over all, I think there's 8 or 9 regions total, and they have colonies pretty much everywhere. And then I'll also be using the historical naval budget because that'll give the United States a pretty good benefit. You can see that it's actually a decrease compared to the Great Britain, but everyone else suffers much worse than this. So this is 32 down to 26. Excuse me, but we can see that Germany is 36 down to 16. Huge cut. And Austria and Japan are 20 down to 10. So they suffer a 50% reduction. This is over a 50% reduction. Whereas the USA only suffers a moderate reduction. So the Great Britain will be proportionately stronger, but everyone else will be proportionately weaker. So you can see Italy will suffer almost a 1/3 reduction to its budget. So if I can, I'll try to choose events which will pick on the weaker nations then. And this is just my way of saying this is how to play an easy game. I'm not saying that this is the way you should play because it's kind of fun to play a challenging game, right? But for the tutorial purposes, I'll just be doing kind of this easier play. I'm going to walk through the nations really quickly. So the USA, the reason why I like them is because they have rapid economic growth, which just means that their naval budget will increase over time. They also have technology leader, which means that they're very good at doing research. It's some kind of bonus to your research ability. So Great Britain also has technology leader. They have efficient shipbuilding, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a reduction to the time it takes to build. And that's pretty important because a battleship in this game, for example, takes 30 months to build, I think. So maybe it's more, but maybe it's 3 years, 36 months. And when I was looking at it, the USA already had a reduction to the shipbuilding time. So, I mean, just saving 6 months or saving 3 months is pretty significant. The problem is, and the reason why I don't like to play Great Britain is, after you design a ship and then you construct it, when you finish its building, you sometimes discover a flaw in it, like there's a weight issue or a turret doesn't work the way you thought. I don't remember what it is exactly. Oh, it could be slower than you think. So I don't like having these hidden flaws, so I prefer the USA for this reason. Okay, France. France has this bonus tech, which I'm not really sure exactly how this bonus tech works. There's 2 different categories. There's research advantage and then there's bonus tech. Let's go to somebody who has both. Yeah, Italy. And this doesn't mean that they start with this tech, but I suppose it means that they get a research bonus to researching it. But they also have, this is an exact research item, but this is a research category. So for example, motor torpedo boats could be one of the categories of research inside ship design. I don't think it is, but it's in another category, but I'll explain this a little bit more later. Okay, here's a good example. There's many different types of naval guns you can research, but they all fall under one naval research category called naval guns. So, alright, so France, let's see, we went to Great Britain. France has inconsistent naval policy. That just means their budget will fluctuate. Germany is a technology leader as well, so they do better research. I think bombastic head of state means the leader is more likely to ask you to build a specific ship type or have demands on you. And cautious, I don't remember. I think it basically speaks for itself. but I think, I mean, I don't even remember exactly what it is. I think it means you're less likely to deploy your ships. No, I don't want to speak incorrectly, so I'm just going to say I'm not sure exactly what this is. Probably it just explains the obvious, that the AI is more cautious with their designs and also with their ship movement. Austria-Hungary and Japan are two very difficult nations to play as, especially if you did historical naval budget. I guess the hardest one to play as would be Italy with historical naval budget, because they also have colonies to defend, whereas Japan and Austria-Hungary only have 1 or 2 regions to defend. Now, they have cautious, but they don't have any other real advantages. And Russia has poor education, which means, along with Spain, I think, they have a slower... Oh, Italy. Italy also has poor education. There's a few custom nations you can play as well. That's why I spoke about Spain. But Russia has this poor education, so they are worse at doing research, and they also have undeveloped shipbuilding industry, which means it takes longer for them to build. But at least they get a bonus to active mine warfare, which I actually don't find too significant in this game. Okay, what else? We got Italy, poor education, cautious, inconsistent naval policy means, again, budget can go around higher, lower. And corruption, I'm not sure what that means exactly. It might have some similar effects with hidden flaws, like your ships can't be built the same. Or it might mean that your budget is susceptible to decreases. I'm not exactly sure. But they have a pretty good research advantage in ship design because, yeah, there was a lot of Italian ship theorists in this time. So, okay, I think I've covered all of them except for Japan, which just has this really cool surprise attack thing. If you have it makes it so Japan is especially powerful if they build a lot of torpedo type ships, because surprise attack allows you to go into an enemy port. It gives you a certain amount of time before the enemy ships are able to react. And you can basically attack freely for a couple turns. The game in actual combat is somewhat real-time, somewhat turn-based. I guess it's like basically turn-based, but in a real-time manner. I'll explain it more as we get in. But anyway, there's just a small window of time where you're allowed to attack the enemy and they're not allowed to attack back. And since the enemy is anchored, they're in their harbor, torpedoes are very effective. So good. I think I've gone over all the different nations, and we can see that their naval budget and the historical naval budget. So I'm going to be doing United States historical naval budget, which should give us a pretty strong start. I really want to stress, don't use very large or large fleet size for your first game. Basically this game runs out of almost like an Excel spreadsheet type window, and it's a pain in the neck to even play around with small fleet size. So I have one game as USA just went to 1923, and that game I was doing small fleet size, and it was already becoming rather annoying to manage the fleets at the end of the game. Now I was pretty successful, so my budget was pretty high towards the end, but I just suggest that you do small or medium. I'm going to go ahead and do medium for this for this game, because I've done small, and I think medium is still manageable. It'll be a little more fun to build some more ships, too. Let's just choose any name. Let's see, USA. I'm not familiar with any of the names at this time, so I'll just choose Tortuga. I will use historical resources, as mentioned, and this option just chooses whether or not you want the AI to generate your starting fleet, or whether you would like to design and construct it yourself. I definitely want to design and construct it myself, so we'll choose game 2 as our empty point, and we'll go ahead and hit OK to start a new game. Now it's bringing up this window where you have to build an existing fleet. I'm actually going to try to look over at my capture software and get this window to fill the screen so that, yeah, you can see a little better. There, I think that's about right. Okay, so the things we want to do, one of the mechanics for the building in the beginning is you're given all these funds and you're allowed to do whatever you want with them. You can build 10 battleships and no destroyers. That wouldn't be very advisable, and I don't actually know if you could build 10 battleships, but I'm just saying you can fill up your fleet in any manner you'd like. Obviously, it's kind of recommended to stagger them down so that you have fewer battleships and you have many destroyers. We'll go ahead and start with bring this over. a battleship to begin with. And what I recommend you do is if you start with this blank, so this will be our tutorial on ship design, I guess. If you start with this blank design, it doesn't fill in like the kind of superstructure, it doesn't fill in the graphics for you. What am I talking about here? If I just auto design a battleship, and I'm going to actually get rid of the guns. So let's clear all turrets. And let's turn this down to nothing and this down to nothing. Update ship graphic. So that's weird, but what has happened is I've removed all the guns, and this is just the layout of the ship. Now, everything in here is just graphical. It's just for your amusement. It doesn't have any significance. So if we wanted to, I can clear all, and we can start with a battleship of, well, let's see if I can add a 1 here. Yeah. And let's go down to 14, because our local yard is only a size 14, so we shouldn't be building anything larger than that. Because I don't want to outsource my building to anyone. I want to build everything at home. Now, if we update the ship graphic, here it is, our big ship, but the problem is, well, it's not really a problem, but the graphic design, if you add some turrets, let's just say I wanted to add 12 turrets, forward and aft. Well, there they are, but there's no like graphical structure to this. So what you're able to do is actually build with the superstructure buttons some designs. So I could build, I don't know, what the heck does a conning tower look like? Something like this? I don't know. Yeah, it's not terrible, is it? It comes out better than I expected. Let me explain this. So you click anywhere, and let's just make a simple like funnel tube, like a section of my ship which is supposed to have my funnel stacks from the engines. So we had something like this. I'm clicking to start, and then I'm clicking again to stop that line and draw another one. So if I want to end, I right click, and this, because I don't have line mode selected, it fills in the area that I've outlined into like a solid shape, which is the same thing as I did here. I clicked, and then I right clicked, and it filled in all the area towards the middle. It just fills it in as a solid structure. And that's the superstructure. You're allowed only 4, so you have to kind of manage your, I don't know what else you would need for this, maybe some weird thing like that, I don't know. But then you also want to add your funnels. I don't think it has any impact on the gameplay. Again, it's just for fun. You can leave your ship completely blank, but it's kind of nice to add some funnels. So you put a funnel in here, and maybe we'll put 3 on this ship. So that's your tutorial on how to add the funnels and stuff, and how to add the superstructure. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear this, because basically what I suggest you do is don't do it yourself. I suggest that you auto design, and then you can actually add, so it added all this nice superstructure for us, which would have taken me, I don't know if I would have ever designed something like this. So we'll just use their version, and then we'll go ahead and adjust everything the way we want. And that's what I recommend you do. Okay, so let's get into actual designing the ship now. I know that I want my displacement to be only 14,000 because that's my limit. And I do want my ship to probably be at least 18, a speed of 18 knots at least. Freeboard, I'll just try to go through each option. Displacement is obvious, that's the total tonnage of your ship. Range, there's short range means that during war you cannot even move. You're stuck in the region you are. So I really recommend against this. This would be just like pure defense ships. So you could build, for example, some minesweepers, I guess, that have very short range. Although minesweepers are so light tonnage, the weight benefit you get for choosing short. The only thing this does is we can see 13,829. Changing the range just has an effect on cost. So you have to build engines which can go for longer distance and carry more coal, fuel of whatever type. And long is extremely expensive on weight. So that's the range, how it works. What I would do in general is almost never use short range unless if you're playing as a nation who's going to be on the defensive, like let's say you're playing as Japan and you just want to control Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia. Maybe it's okay for you to build one battleship type that's just your home defense fleet. But for me, as the United States, I have to move around quite a bit, so I'm not going to choose any short ships. Okay, freeboard is kind of like the sides of your ships. You can choose lower, but they have, which does a huge weight reduction, but it's pretty poor performance on any kind of choppy seas. So we'll also avoid this. Okay, let's see. Speed speaks for itself, just how fast your ship is. General numbers for this is when you're starting the game, battleships will be around 18. Heavy cruisers will be around 20. Light cruisers will be around 23. And destroyers will be around 28. Towards the end of the game, you can add about 5 to all those numbers. So your battleships will be around 22. You'll have battle cruisers at 27. You'll have heavy cruisers also around that 28 or so. Light cruisers will get up almost to 30, and your destroyers will be about 35. Engine priority. This is actually kind of important. The only effect this has is on the weight of the engine and the reliability of your engine. So if I chose normal speed, we can see 14 to 24. If I go to speed, it's just going to reduce the weight. We can see that it's dropped down to 132. Or alternatively, if I go to reliability, it's go up to 315. Now I generally choose normal, but like what are you weighing? What is the trade-off here besides just weight? Speedy engines are more likely to break down in combat, so that's kind of a bad thing. What I generally do is set engine priority to normal for everything. I have usually one like light cruiser or heavy cruiser, which is my raider, right? Light cruiser. I'll set the range to long, and I'll set the engine priority to reliable, so that I trust it going into foreign waters. Because if you have an engine breakdown and you're in foreign waters, your ship will either be interned or, even worse, it might be scuttled. So for our battleship, we'll just choose normal. All right, belt size for our first battleship. Well, it kind of gave us some nice specs. If we're shooting for 14,000, it's kind of already given us a range to look at. But I guess I disagree with a few of these decisions. So let's go ahead and choose belt only at 7. And that's going to save us a lot of weight. You can see that the weight here for just belt is 1972 versus 2100. So that's already a savings of about 150. I also want to choose deck of 2, but deck extended of only 1, which will save us another 100, which is great. Now the extended portions of the belt and the deck are like the covering of the deck and the covering of the belt. Belt being the side of your ship, and deck being the flat top portion. Oy, words are getting hard suddenly. Anyway, the deck extended and belt extended are the coverings of the non-vital portions. So, like, think about this area up here, maybe, or the belt over here. Any parts of your ship where it's not as critical that they're covered with armor. So you can choose an armor difference between them. Whereas the main belt here is going to be your normal belt. Let me get a drink real fast. So my general rule of thumb here is make belt. Well, you want to make it as high as you can, sure, because belt is a lot of your engagement. Deck is only used in really long range engagements where the shells actually have to arc more. So if you're really close, you're just firing side by side. But if you're really far away, you have to arc quite a bit, and that means that you'll actually end up hitting the top of the ship more. In the beginning of the game, like in the 1900s until like 1910, most of the combat is going to be not long enough range for you to really need your deck. So that's why I've kept deck at 2, which is pretty low, and I'm doing deck extended at only 1. I have lowered belt as well because I need to get below this 14,000, but I don't want to compromise speed. Okay, so conning tower is usually relatively cheap, but also very important. So this is usually for me 1 to 2 to even 3 points higher than the other armor categories. So I'm going to just leave it at 8, and I'll fiddle with it last to see how much I can stretch this to, because we definitely need a lot more ammo. The lower caliber gun, the faster that they're going to fire. So in general, the lower caliber, the more rounds you need per gun. But even for a 12-inch gun, we're going to want probably at least 140. I could, if I really need, lowers to 135, but any lower than like 125, it's not worth it, and we'll have to just make some sacrifice somewhere else. Okay, another thing I should explain right away is I know I'm not going to want 7-inch secondary guns. The mechanic involved with secondary guns is, well, it just allows you to have a separate tier, a different caliber gun that your ship also carries. So you can see my two main turrets are here, and these are 7. It only goes up to a total of 7 visible. That's just the visibility of these turrets. If you put this up to, let's say 9 per side, and I updated it, well, we can only see 7 here, but there technically are 9. They're just not all visible. But that's okay. Now, casemates means it's kind of built into the side of the ship, which means in choppy seas, if your ship was rolling, it would be harder for these to shoot because they're not in turrets. But I don't have the technology to build into turrets right away, so you're stuck with casemates. And really, they're not so terrible. So I'm not going to want that many. I'll probably want 7. 7 per side. So 14 total. And I'm not going to want any tertiary guns. So what's my logic here? My main guns are going to be the ones I want to use the most, but the secondary guns need to be capable of targeting smaller ships who try to approach. For this, you want 6-inch caliber guns. If you didn't have 6-inch caliber guns here, if you decided to go with like 8 or 10, you do need tertiary guns of some caliber 6 or less. Because the mechanic in this game is 6-inch guns and less do not suffer a penalty targeting smaller ships like destroyers. And destroyers are the ones who are going to make those torpedo runs on you later. So you need enough 6-inch or lower guns to kind of stave off any kind of destroyer torpedo attack runs. So I usually do some kind of primary, whatever it is, and I usually always make, unless the primary itself is already 6 inches or under, I have a secondary which is exactly at 6 inches. And that's what I'm going to do in this case too. So we do 6-inch, 7 per side, which is a good number. I think that's enough. And that is going to be the gun outfitting for our ship. Also, I think this looks like these stacks are a little far forward, and just because I prefer a little bit of symmetry, let's go ahead and just be very symmetric about this. Why not, right? We have the ability to do it. Okay, that's not quite perfect. We're getting... Okay, that's good. I basically didn't change anything, but just for my own sake. Okay, good. Now everything is basically done, but we see that we have a lot of space left over, which means after lowering all these guns to what I want them to be, especially getting rid of the tertiary guns, because note, these tertiary guns are not really going to add any benefit to attacking. And in fact, the more types of guns you have engaging a ship, the more each set of guns suffers a penalty. The mechanic here is, if you were actually shooting at this time frame in the war, you needed to spot your shells and see, okay, my shell landed a little to the left or a little bit short, so I need to increase my range or aim a little more to the right. Now, if you fire a shell and another gun fires a shell at the same time, you're not sure which splash in the water corresponds to which shell. So I prefer to limit the number of types of guns that are firing. Now note, although this doesn't really make sense, the penalty is not applied against guns of the same caliber firing together. So I think all 7 of these guns firing together don't suffer a penalty, but if I'm firing the 12-inch and a 6-inch, now they're 2 competing gun types. And to me that doesn't really make sense, and it's possible I have it totally wrong, but I think that's the way it works. So that's the way we'll play it. And if it's not that way, then you might actually have an advantage for doing tertiary guns, which I guess that would make sense. And we're going to have a torpedo on each side. I almost never use these torpedoes on battleships. We can almost just take them off. But if you ever get a ship to the point where it's just about to sink, but you don't want to finish it off with your guns, you can tell your ship to hold fire and just try to torpedo it. Unfortunately, it's really hard to get these ships to actually fire torpedoes, which we'll see in the combat. Okay, so now that we know exactly what our gun outfit is going to be, so we know exactly how much weight we can play with to fill the rest of this armor. So I'm going to go ahead and bump this back up to 7.5. We're doing okay. Belt extended, I'm going to leave at 3. That's fine. I'll do 2 and 1 still. I'm not going to put more deck back. Well, okay, how much was it to go to 2.5? Yeah, a lot. In fact, I would rather more speed than increasing the deck again. Because this ship is going to want to is not going to want to be at super range with only 12-inch guns. If I go to gun data, we can see that the max range of these is only 11,000. And at this range, they only penetrate 0.6 armor. So that's, well, I mean, we have much more than 0.6. So assuming that we only fight 12-inch guns at the beginning of the game, we won't need as much deck armor as we have here. So I'm happy with that. A final note about the armor is when you upgrade a ship, the only things you're allowed to upgrade are these last three: turrets, turret top, and secondaries. So if you want, you can intentionally set turrets and turret top a little bit low, and when you end up getting savings to your armor and to your machine weight, these will just decrease the weight values that are assigned to a specific armor thickness. When you upgrade your ship to incorporate these differences, which is only going to incorporate differences in the weight for your engines, you can only apply that to these three armors or to adding more shells or changing the fire control type. We'll see all those mechanics later. I think I'm going to go ahead and choose 8 inches for my turret, and I'll choose 2.5, which is fine for my turret top. Since I have a pretty significant outfit of secondary guns, I want them defended. I'll see if I can sneak in 5. We only have 79 to play with. I doubt we can get there. Yeah, we're a little bit short. I also want to upgrade the conning tower quite a bit, so I'll go back to 4.5. And we'll change the conning tower to... Oh, that's a rather big jump. Okay, so I kind of like to min-max a little bit here. We see that 8 is 921. 8.5 goes up by 11. 9 goes up by 10, 9.5 goes up by 11, and 10 goes up by 11. Okay, 10.5. Was that 11 again? I'm just misreading. Yeah, it's just 11. I don't think we need more than 10.5 armor, to be honest. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop this back down to 10, and we'll see what we can squeeze out in terms of shells. Okay, so since we have 4 to play with, that's probably all we need to do. And in fact, this is our first ship then. I'm going to not call it the Michigan. Let's call it the North Dakota. That's fine. So we do the check mark just to make sure the design checks out. In this case, it does. And I'll go ahead and save this ship. All okay. Save as North Dakota. Yes. Now we have the option to actually build. So we just need to suggest a name. It's going to suggest North Dakota for the first of the ship class. These are the specs. So of my 305 million, it's going to cost $46.5 million to build. Now, one of the mechanics you want to make use of in the beginning of the game is every time you build a new ship for the first time, a new ship class, I should say, the first ship of every ship class costs an additional amount, just a fixed amount, like an additional, let's say, 10% on top of whatever it costs to build. Because, I mean, the abstraction here is the docks don't really understand how to build ships of this type yet. They might need to spend extra money fitting their docks with the correct parts. I don't know. But for whatever reason, the first one of every type costs a little bit extra. So in our pre-war, before the building initial ships phase, before we actually get into the game, we want to build one of as many types of ships as we want. Because if we build at least one of them, the game will consider that ship class type already having one constructed, and thus we won't suffer that penalty if we build a new design. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'll do this off camera because you've seen everything I want to show you about ship design. I'll just come back and actually show you what the designs are, but I'm going to go ahead and build off camera a heavy cruiser or armored cruiser, a light cruiser, a destroyer, and a minesweeper. So when I come back, all those will be built, and we'll be able to actually begin playing the game. So thanks for watching this episode, and I'll see you in the next.